This is going to be a little bit different than the debate format that we've seen in the past. This one's going to be moderated by CNN's anchors Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. I'll have to do research on them. I don't really know. I don't know what they've done on this scale, but we'll figure that part out. But it is going to be interesting because this first debate has a different format than the debates that we've seen in the past. Now, they've moved the debate up, but that makes sense. We're expecting a lot more mail in ballots, and mail in ballots happen early. So, if the and that's a big part of the reason why the debate got moved up is the candidate said, look, people are going to be mailing in ballots. We want to have a debate ahead of all the mail in ballots coming in so that it can have an impact. That makes perfect sense. Um, but other things changed about the format, and they aren't as focused on taking advantage of kind of preempting mail-in ballots. This was more about kind of style. The most notable thing is there's no crowd for this debate. Biden and Trump are going to be in a studio. It's going to be the anchors, it's going to be the candidates, and that's basically it. So that's a very different way of presenting. The other part is the mics can be muted. So my understanding of the latest development is a candidate will get a question, they get 2 minutes to answer the question, and then the mic can be shut off. It's like, you got 2 minutes. If you're still yapping, nobody's going to hear you. The other candidate has a chance to respond to what you said. Now, they'll do Q&A format. You get 2 minutes, and then your mic gets shuts off, and the other guy gets to speak. But then they will open it up to something that's more free form, so everybody will get a chance to talk and to elaborate on things. But that's not going to be how the debate opens up. 2 minutes of talk time. Okay. Now, the reason I bring all this up is because I think that this first debate puts Trump at a very big disadvantage. We're going to see what people say because the day after the debates, everybody's going to have an opinion about who won and who lost. But I think that Trump is at a disadvantage in this format. I'll tell you why. When you look at Trump present, there are a couple of different things that are going on. But the most notable thing is when you look at Trump present, Trump is very good in front of a crowd. He's very good in front of a crowd. He gets a crowd and he feeds off crowd energy. He knows how to shift his talking points to really excite the crowd about what he's trying to do. And when Trump is presenting a speech, he usually follows a certain format. He basically talks about he'll talk about what Biden hasn't done, can't do. He'll talk about his past successes. He'll talk about the things that he's going to do to make America better if he's elected. Those are kind of the three things that he tends to focus on. But those are things that tend to work in front of a crowd. If you notice a lot of Trump's interviews of late after his conviction, when he's in these small formats, like if you look at him when he did Timcast in real life or when he did Fox News, Trump still talked about his main three areas. Like, here's what Joe Biden's not doing, here's what I am doing, here's my track record. He'll still talk about that. But now it comes out of context because there's no crowd to get excited. So an interviewer will ask him a question about like the troops, and Trump wants to default to his talking points. And sometimes you think, well, wait a minute, you're not answering the question that was asked. So that's going to be a difficult thing for him. The other thing, and let's be very honest about it, the other big thing Trump's going to have to deal with is his conviction. I don't know all the questions that are going to be asked during the debate, but I can guess what most of them are going to be. Let's face it. We know that the economy is going to be talked about. We know that the borders are going to be talked about. We know that the wars are going to be talked about. We know that Trump's conviction is going to be talked about. Now I want you to imagine a scenario here. Just picture this. Donald Trump, you got 2 minutes to talk. And then your mic is getting muted and you know it. Somebody asks you a question about something not related to your conviction, but they open up with the economy. Now you're Trump. You want to get to the conviction conversation because you want to get it out of the way. But that's not what they asked you about. You got 2 minutes and you're trying to figure out, how do I answer your question and how do I talk about this conviction? And how do I also kind of talk about what Biden isn't doing and what I will do? That becomes a very tricky spot because you've only got 2 minutes to do it. If you could just answer the question the way you wanted to, you had 4 minutes, 5 minutes, you could hit all the points you want to hit. But when you've got 2 minutes and you've got to focus, that makes it hard. That makes it very distracting. Take a good look at the way Trump responded the day after the conviction. He did a presser from Trump Tower. And Trump is normally very energized. He's normally very full of life, and he's hard charged in all of his pressers, all of his speeches. That was the first time I saw Trump really looking tired. And I mean, I get it. He's probably been up all night. He just had to deal with the conviction. Hasn't had a lot of sleep. He's got a history. He's known for not sleeping much to begin with. Apparently he tends to run on very little sleep in general. But here he is, and he's got all this stuff on his mind, and he may not have slept all night. And he's doing a presser, and it's the first time it really showed. But the thing that I noticed the most was he wasn't frustrated with the case. He wasn't frustrated with the verdict because he knows, he can appeal and he knows he probably won't go to jail. But the thing he was frustrated with was the gag order. Trump can't talk about a lot of the case. He can't mention names. He can't get into some details. That seems to bother Trump more than anything else. And listen to him in all of his speeches now, where he keeps going back to, I can't talk about this. I want to talk about this, but I can't talk about it. That is a constant in his conversations now, his frustration with his inability to go into the details of the case. Now, why am I bringing that up? Simple. If I'm Biden, one of the things that I'm going to be if I'm Biden, I'm going to point to Trump and I'm going to talk about how you're a convicted felon. How are you supposed to run the country as a convicted felon? How can we trust you to do these things as a convicted felon? If I'm Biden, every time I answer a question, part of what I'm going to do at the end of it is make a dig about you're a convicted felon. Not because I think that it's going to have an impact on Trump's ability to run, but because I wanted to distract him when he's answering questions. That's the thing that gets under Trump's skin, because he can't talk about it the way he wants to. So you imagine, I'm Joe Biden, I'm talking about the open borders, and I'm saying, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, and I just announced a plan to put a ceasefire to Gaza. I can do that, but that convicted felon over there, look, he can't even keep the conviction off of his record. So how the heck can I would do something like that just to get under his skin. And what that seems to do to Trump might want to answer a question, but Trump seems to be getting distracted by this. You go to Trump and you talk about the war, and Trump wants to answer a question about the war, but he wants to address that convicted felon thing too. And he's only got 2 minutes, and that's where it's going to get hard for him, because he's going to have to pick and choose what does he want to talk about. That's what I think is really going to hurt him. Let me come to some of the comments here. Kelly Keegan does not like Candace Owens. She's the worst kind of grifter. I guess I'm curious to know what you mean. I mean, I look at, there are people on YouTube who I think say what they mean, and there are people on YouTube who don't. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, because for some people, YouTube it's acting. It's like TV. They play a character and they get paid. And some of them are making a whole lot of money doing it. I'm not going to fault them for it. That's not my style, but there are people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on YouTube pretending to be something that they're not. It's like, all right, I get it. I like to think that I can build a channel and actually talk about things that I care about and believe in. But I'm not going to fault somebody for saying, look, this is just TV and play acting, and I've got a successful channel doing it. I won't name names, but take a look at a lot of the channels that are out there and listen to the message that they say, and then look at their personal life and just say, do you live the life that you talk about on your show? If you don't, yeah, you're basically a grifter or you're an actor, but you might be very well compensated for it, so I can't fault you. But I do tend to focus, like what I listen to, I tend to focus on people who actually seem to present their genuine opinions. That's just the kind of stuff I like to listen to. That's what I like to watch. Kelly Keegan called Trump a dim tool. Selena Girl, 16. Okay, Selena Girl. But Hunter is a convict too. That's true, and Kelly Keegan does the same thing. Hunter isn't running for president. See, that's going to be the challenge. If we talk about convictions hurts Trump. It doesn't hurt Biden. I mean, let's play out conviction conversation for a second. Let's play it out and let's think about the Hunter angle and what it does or doesn't mean. And Kelly Keegan said Tim Pool is a dim tool. Good alliteration. Good rhyming there. Alliteration. I guess that is alliteration. So okay, let's play out the conviction conversation. If I'm Biden, I'm going to look at Trump and I'm going to say, you're a convicted felon. So that's a strike against you. Americans shouldn't trust you. I'm going to say, that's not exactly the way he'll say it, but that's the idea. Okay. Trump can say Biden is a convicted felon too. I mean, Hunter Biden. But Joe's going to say, so what? I'm not my kid. I'm not Hunter. And Joe Biden can also say this, and this is why Trump can't really go down that route. Hunter Biden gets convicted, and all the way leading up to the conviction, Joe Biden said, hey, I'm not going to use my presidential power to try to get him pardoned. I'm not going to cut him any breaks. If he gets convicted, he gets convicted. That's on him. He messed up. Biden's going to say, I didn't pardon my son. So far, he's not. And I got to tell you, I'm not in that situation. If I was president and my kid got convicted of something and they're only going to get like 2 years anyway, heck no, I'm not. It's like, don't send my kid to jail. I don't have to think about stuff like that. My kid's a pretty good kid. But yeah, I mean, Hunter's got all kinds of, drugs and all kinds. Look, Hunter's a mess. Hunter is an absolute mess. He cleans up well. You see him on TV and he's got the suit on and he looks serious. But when you look, you're like, you're a drug addict. You got problems. You got all kinds of problems. You got sexual misbehavior. You just got a mess following you. You look good on TV, but I can't trust you. All of that said, that was my kid. I'd probably pardon him. Keep him out of jail. Biden's not doing that. So Biden can look and he's like, you got convicted, Trump, and you complained about it. My kid gets convicted, and I pretty much said, hey, he did the crime, he can do the time. So Trump can't really win this. He can't win this argument about convictions because it's Trump versus Hunter, not Trump versus Joe. If it was Trump versus Joe, that's a different conversation. Then he can talk about, hey, you're no better than me on this. So that's going to be tough. We also have to remember, let me turn that off so it doesn't keep beeping at me. We also have to remember that Trump is going to be facing his sentencing a little bit after the first debate. The first debate's on June 27th. Roughly 2 weeks after that, his sentencing is on July the 11th, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be good TV. I will definitely be tuning in for that. I don't think Trump's going to get any jail time. And I'm pretty sure that Trump knows he's not going to get any jail time. But there's always got to be like that little lingering bit of doubt. Because let's face it, he was probably thinking, this case, I'm not going to be found guilty. This case will never make it to trial. This case has gone further than a lot of people ever imagined, including me. I didn't think this was going to be taken seriously in court. Definitely didn't think he was going to get convicted. So now you got to say, look, if I could get placed in court for this, if I could get convicted for this, there's a possibility I could get time. Probably not 20 years, probably not 4 years. If he got time, it might be 3 months, because there's like a precedent of that. I don't think that's going to happen, but in the back of his mind, he's got to be thinking about that. And part of what's going to be a problem for him during the debate is the distraction. Can he have a debate? Can he focus on the questions at hand? Or does he stay distracted by the felony conviction, the upcoming sentencing, concerns about whether or not he'll be available for the second debate? Like, all of that stuff is going to be weighing in his mind. And oh, guess what? He's got 2 minutes to answer a question. So you got to focus on the question that was asked in those 2 minutes. Or you're going to end up going off on a tangent and people are just going to walk away. And this is what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to get focused on what he wants to answer, not the questions that are being asked. And after the first debate, people are going to be saying that Trump didn't look focused. That's what I think is going to happen. Because if I'm Biden, literally, I'm just going to be peppering convict, convict, convict throughout the night to keep him off balance. We'll see if that's how it plays out. But don't be surprised if that's how it plays out. Now, let's think about a couple of things here. So Trump's going to go, there's going to be the first debate. Then Trump's got a sentencing. Let's assume that he doesn't get any jail time. Then he's got a while, because the next debate is September the 10th, and that one's going to be on ABC. But we don't know where, we don't have the time. But, I'm assuming it's going to be roughly the same time. Where they host it, don't know. I would, where's ABC headquarters? New York or LA, someplace like that, is where I would expect. That's going to be the debate where Trump likely comes out guns a-blazing. Because if he goes through the first debate and he gets bad feedback, then he'll go into the second debate and he'll be more focused. But now it's back against the wall because the first debate will have happened and some mail-in voting will have already happened. So he's trying to pick up, he's not really picking up as many of the mail-in votes as he wants to with that second debate. Second debate is about people who are going to the ballots, and you'll already have a lot of the voters pulled out of the market. So I think that one's just going to be, it's going to be tougher. This is going to be a tougher road for Trump to hoe, tougher situation than normal, and we're going to have to see what he does there. However, thinking about the upcoming debate, there are a couple of things to kind of go through. Because it's sort of the question, if we think about the debate, what do we think Trump is going to have to answer, and what do we think Biden is going to have to answer? Because the question is going to boil down to who does a better job of handling the questions that they got to deal with. Valeria, Queen of Valhalla, Trump 2024. Valeria, Queen of Valhalla. I haven't heard of Valeria. I mean, I'm not that great with all of my Norse mythos, but Valhalla I know. So, okay, that's interesting. I'm kind of curious about that. Oh, and before we dive in further, if you like the content, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. So when I do my pop-up lives, you'll know that they're available. Okay. What do we know we're going to hear questions about in the debate. The economy, that's coming up. The borders, that's coming up. The wars are going to come up. Those are coming up for sure. You can bet on it. Questions are, who's going to do a better job of answering questions about that? And let's think about it. I mean, let's take a look at a couple of things here. So let's start with the economy. Now, if I'm looking at the economy, I would imagine that Trump is going to win that argument. The economy is, we've got inflation. We've got messy inflation. I understand it, but let's face it, the fact of the matter is prices are up. Income is not up to the level that prices have increased. People aren't happy. People are feeling the pinch. So if we're talking about the economy, if I'm Trump, I'm fundamentally going to say, who did you feel like you had a better handle on life under? Me or this guy Biden here? And I think a lot of people are going to say Trump. I see a lot of Trump supporters who will basically say Trump because they didn't have to deal. If you can even look at if you look at the economy and you look at the trends, fundamentally, Trump was doing a very good job with the economy, with inflation, with everything. What messed things up for Trump was COVID. The economy was doing great until COVID, and then COVID sent the economy into the toilet. That's where things went off the rails. Everybody was getting laid off. Basically, nobody had money. They had to send out stimulus checks. COVID messed the economy up. It has since recovered, and Biden's in a weird place where it's hard to really talk about Biden's impact on the economy because Biden's been dealing with a recovery economy. Like, look, you guys didn't have jobs. Everything was closed down. I've come back and I've basically started bringing jobs back. So how many of the jobs that he's created are just recovery jobs? It's like, look, this job existed before COVID. I'm just putting another person in it. It's hard to really measure how good the economy and the jobs market has been under Biden because he's been dealing with a recovery. But Trump can talk about, kind of where the economy was and whether people felt like they were in better shape or not. But if I'm Biden, let's face it, if I'm Biden, I'm going to point out how people didn't have jobs, how, you had to send out stimulus checks, and that's going to be what Trump has to deal with. Do people feel that the economy was better under Trump or under Biden? Now, when I look at, I do videos all the time. And when I send them out, a lot of people basically talk about the Trump economy, and they feel more confident about the Trump economy than they do the Biden economy. And if that's the case, then I would expect to see a lot of votes for Trump on that. But a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people were relying on stimulus checks. So we're going to have to see who wins the question about the economy. I don't know if that's going to be Trump. I don't know if that's going to be Biden. I can see it split kind of down the middle. But if I'm an auto worker in Michigan and I'm thinking about the economy, who do I feel is better for me, Trump or Biden? That's really the question. Now, borders is funny because the border is going to come up, and if you'll notice what Biden has recently done, Biden recently announced that he was closing the border. Apparently, too many. They measure like how many people are being arrested illegally crossing, and when the number crosses a certain threshold, they're like, okay, look, too many people are coming across at once. Shut it down. Biden just shut down the border. He announced the order. I think it was today. So if we're talking about the open borders, it's going to be interesting whether the borders are still closed when the debate happens. Because if I'm Trump, I would want to talk about the borders and how Biden's letting too many people in, illegal immigration. That's one of Trump's talking points. Except that right now, if he starts to use that, if I'm Biden, I can say, look, I just closed the borders. What are you talking about? You can talk about how, the borders are crazy, there are too many people, and say, I just closed the borders. Like, you're right. There was a problem. I took care of it. So I don't know how Trump is going to pivot on that. Before Biden closed the borders, that was a weakness Biden had to deal with. But if he's closed them, well, it's like, okay, Trump, what are you going to say now? You have to look at a lot of things that Biden has done in the last week or so. But he's really hitting on the things that you got to worry about for the debate. Because if I'm Trump, I want to talk about the wars and say, look, you got wars that have started because you're president now. Well, Biden just announced what he's going to do to get a Gaza ceasefire. That's not finalized, but that's the show. But that's part of the show. I see I have a minute. So we will get going in just a minute. I'm going to give people a chance to swoop in. If you are new to the show, let me know what state you are voting from. And if not, we are going to get the show going, resumed in just a moment. Okay, so if you were part of the show before, type in 1. If not, don't worry about it. I'm just curious to know if there's anybody who came in before, had a question, and we get that answered. Okay, so we're talking about the debate. There's a debate coming up. Biden and Trump are going to debate on the 27th. Okay. Biden and Trump are going to have a debate on June the 27th. It's going to be the first of 2 debates. Question is, who's going to win? Is it going to be Biden? Is it going to be Trump? Right now, I think Trump's going to lose the debate because I think Trump's distracted. I think that this new format is not advantageous to Trump. Trump likes to have a crowd to talk to. They've taken his crowd away. Trump likes to be able to hit on a lot of different points. He's only going to get 2 minutes to make a point, and then they can mute his mic. Trump doesn't like the fact that he's got a gag order on him, and he can't talk about his conviction. There are a lot of things that are working against Trump for the June 27th debate. So don't be surprised if the day after the debate, a lot of people are coming on social media and saying Trump didn't win the debate because he sounded really distracted. He was unfocused in the debate. I can easily see that happening. If I'm Joe Biden, what I'm going to be focused on during the debates is Trump's conviction. Every time I answer a question, I'm going to try to slide in a dig about Trump being a convict. And the reason for that is because I think it's going to keep Trump off balance. You ask Trump about the war, somebody just made a dig about his conviction. Trump's going to want to talk about that in addition to the war. And he's only got 2 minutes, and I can easily see him getting distracted. Because the one thing if you look at the way Trump has been talking ever since his conviction, he's not frustrated with the conviction. He's not frustrated with the sentencing. I mean, he knows he's probably not going to go to jail. He understands all of that. But the thing that Trump is frustrated about is the gag order. Trump does not like not being able to talk about the court case in the level of detail that he wants to. That bothers him. And I saw him on Tim Pool. I saw him on Fox. When you look at him in interviews now, he's distracted. You ask him a question and he goes off into left field on something else because you can see that this conviction is weighing on his mind and he wants to talk about it. And that, I think, is going to hurt him in this debate. Now, if he had the crowd there, he'd be feeding off crowd energy. That's a different kind of presentation from Trump. No crowd, only 2 minutes to answer questions. Yeah, he's going to be trying to figure out, what do I want to talk about in these 2 minutes? And that's what I think is going to hurt him. That's what I think is really going to hurt him in this. Now, we already know what they're going to talk about. Figure that for the most part, you can guess what the questions are for the debate. They're going to ask about the open borders. They're going to ask about the economy. They're going to ask about the wars. We know that those topics are going to come up. We also know that they're going to talk about Trump's conviction. So Trump's got a little bit extra that he has to answer that Biden really doesn't. Some people might say, well, Hunter Biden went to jail. Yeah. Hunter Biden's not running for president, so that doesn't matter. Trump is going to be at a disadvantage in this first debate, and the question is going to be, how does he respond to that? Is he able to bounce back? Is he able to stay focused on the key questions? Is he able to come across and be convincing? And this is important because the debate that's coming up on June the 27th is designed to help influence early mail-in voting. See, the whole reason this got moved up is because you got a lot of people who they know are going to vote by mail, vote early. I'm old school. I like to go to the polls, but I got a kid. I like to bring my kid to the polls with me just because it helps me to teach her about the election process. So she sees her dad going in and voting. She sees that behavior. It helps her to think, oh yeah, one day I want to be able to do this too. That's just me. But not everybody does that. But imagine all these people who are going to do the mail-in voting, and all they've got to go on is one debate where Biden was pretty focused and Trump was pretty distracted. That's going to be tough. We'll get going right back in just a minute. I've been talking a lot, so I got to quench my thirst. Okay, so we're talking about the debate. Who's going to win the debate on June the 27th? If you got thoughts, feel free to drop them into the chat, because I've got thoughts. Part of what I was mentioning is I think Trump's going to have a hard time winning this first debate because of the conviction. Trump's going to be distracted going into this debate. That's just a fact. If you look at the way Trump has been in interviews before the conviction versus after, it's two different versions of Trump. Trump before the conviction, he had all the charisma and all the strength and the energy. After the conviction, Trump's been distracted because of this gag order. The conviction doesn't really seem to bother him. I'm pretty sure Trump has the same takeaway most of us do, which is that he's not going to do any time. So none of that bothers him. But what bothers him is the gag order. Trump can't name names. He can't talk about the conviction in the level of detail that he wants, and that is ticking him off. And when you look at Trump and the interviews he does after the debate, you can see that he's more distracted because interviewers will ask him questions and he goes off on a tangent because he wants to talk about this conviction. Now, I understand. Look, I get it. You got convicted. You don't feel it's fair. You want to talk about it. If you're doing an interview for a network and you got time, sure, you can do that. But if you got 2 minutes to talk, then I think it's a problem. A CC says, so you think his inability to speak about it freely is going to make it harder? Yes, I do. Here's why. What Trump struggles with is not being able to speak his mind. That's a hard thing for him. If he can speak his mind, he's great. If he can't speak his mind, then suddenly he struggles. And take a look at what he did on his Fox interview. When you ask him questions and he can't answer the way he wants to, he gets more caught up in not being able to answer the question the way he wants to than he does in providing you an answer. I was watching him on Fox, and they were asking him about the troops and some of the things that he was going to do. And he kept going back to the conviction and the case and the gag order and the fact that he can't talk about some of the things that he wants to talk about. It was a really weird interview because they were asking him about one thing and he was answering something entirely different. I understand why he was going there because he was frustrated. But the fact of the matter is that if he's in a debate and he's doing that, he's going to come across as unfocused. And you're going to have voters who are trying to make a decision about who they're going to vote for on those early mail-in ballots. And all they're going to have is one debate to go on, this June 27th debate. So imagine I'm a voter in Michigan, a key battleground state, and I'm trying to make a decision about who I think is going to put me in the best position. Biden has answered questions in the debate, and I get a clear sense for what he stands for. Trump has been in the debate, and I'm less clear because Trump's been focused on how frustrated he is about not being able to talk about the conviction and the hush money case. I don't think that someone's necessarily going to say they don't agree with Trump, but I do think they're going to say, I didn't get as clear a sense for how Trump can help me as I did for how Biden can help me. And I think that's what's going to hurt Trump in the first debate. A CC says, so do you think that can make him look flustered? Similarly to how Biden does from time to time. So are they going to look nearly identical in that regard? Well, so I want you to think about something, CC, because I hear you. Let's think about the format. He says, I see what you're saying. Yeah. You got to remember this format. This is my opinion, but this format heavily favors Biden. I'll tell you why. You get 2 minutes to answer a question, and then they mute your mic. So you don't have time to go on and on about stuff. Now, if you're Biden, you got 2 minutes. Basically, all you need to do is be focused on the question. What'd you ask me? You asked me about the economy. I already know what I'm going to say about the economy, so when the question comes, I got 2 minutes. I've already got my answer prepped. I'm going to give my answer, and I'm going to make sure I got a little bit of time to go back to Trump's a convict. That's what I'm going to try to do in 2 minutes. If you ask me about the border, I'm going to talk about, hey, I just closed the border. Talk about how that's going to positively impact America. And in my last few seconds, I'm going to make sure I dive into, and by the way, Trump's a convict. Convict. I would hit on that every chance I got if I'm Biden. And now in that 2 minutes, so remember, 2 minutes, Biden just has to stick to his talking point, get convict in there, and then pass it over to Trump. 2 minutes. Here's what I think is gonna bother Trump. People will ask him a question and he'll want to answer it, but he's got convict on his mind and he wants to defend himself. And he's going to try to figure out, how do I answer your question, but how do I also get this convict conversation going because I want to talk about it. And that's where he's going to start looking distracted. I think it's going to be much harder for Trump to stay focused than for Biden to stay focused because Trump has an added distraction that Biden doesn't have. So it's going to be a disadvantage for him in this format. If you didn't have the 2 minutes of mic time, it'd be a whole different conversation because the candidate could go into detail, could answer the question the way they want. It would be more of a true debate. This is like an academic. It's kind of like the difference between a boxing match and a street fight. This one's got a bunch of rules. Like there are people who can win boxing matches who would get stomped on in a street fight. Because in a street fight, you don't have these rules. I can poke you in the eye, throw dirt in your face, step on your toe. I can do whatever I want to in a street fight. Put me in a boxing match, and I got to score points, and I got to box according to some rules, and now I'm at a disadvantage. This, Trump, street fight. Crush you in the street fight, but they're putting him into a boxing match. See, street fight, you got the crowd. You get the energy off the crowd. You talk about what you want to. You really hit home on the points in a way that's convincing to the people in the audience. Trump doesn't have any of that. None of the things that he really feeds on are going to be available to him. He's got to be quick. He's got to be focused. He's got nothing to resonate his points off of. That's going to be hard. And he's also going to be getting peppered with, you're a convict, you're a convict, you're a convict. Yeah, let's face it, if I'm Biden, the days leading up to the debate, I'm going to be talking about the conviction, not because I care. Biden probably knows just as well as Trump. Probably not getting any time. It's not about whether Trump gets time. It's about whether Trump gets distracted. I want him foaming at the mouth because he's so angry that I keep calling him a convict. That's what I want, because then he's not focused. ACC, so I think Biden will definitely have an advantage. Yet in the first debate, yes. I think he has a big advantage in the first debate. Now, second debate is going to be different. The one in September, that's a different situation. Because by September, I'm assuming Trump's not going to get any time. We don't know that for sure right now. So for the June debate, Trump's got all this stuff weighing on his mind. September debate, Trump will already know, okay, yeah, I got convicted, but I didn't get any time. September debate, Biden just closed the borders. Biden just proposed a deal to, potentially ceasefire the Gaza, the war on the Gaza Strip. Biden has a lot of things in play right now that might be effective talking points for the June debate. But let's say he keeps the border closed for 2 weeks in time for the June debate, but then he opens them back up. Well, it helps him in June, doesn't help him in September. Trump's going to have a whole different set of talking points he can use in September that aren't going to be available to him in June. Trump's not going to be as distracted in September. Once they say, look, you're not getting any jail time, you're going to be a convicted felon, but so what? You can still run as a Republican nominee. Once he's got all of that done, then he's not distracted. But he's not going to have all of that done on June 27th when this first debate happens. So yeah, I think Trump is going to be way more distracted, and I think that gives Biden a huge advantage. Lean Donut. Have you guys noticed how Trump struggles to say words in a coherent syntax, and when he does, it's plotting nonsense that means nothing to no one? So, okay, there are a couple of things, Lean Donut, I would say to that. One is, the first time I listened to a full Trump speech at a rally, I think was when he went down to Wildwood. I didn't go down to Wildwood, but I watched that speech. I watched the whole thing. And I'd never watched him start to finish on a speech. Trump pivots. If you haven't seen it before, it can seem nonsensical. Like, I actually understand what you mean, but when you listen to the whole speech, it starts to make sense. I'll give an example. When I was watching the Trump speech in Wildwood, Trump is talking like he's talking about a point. Basically he's like, crooked Joe Biden, the economy's in a mess, and hot dogs. And you're like, wait, what? Why did you start talking about hot dogs? So it didn't look like it made any sense. And the weird thing is, Trump pivots. So he's talking about one thing, and he threw out hot dogs. You're like, what are you talking about with hot dogs? I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense. And then he goes back to his first point. But then he weaves it in like he's just kind of getting a feel for where the audience is. He went to hot dogs, and what he was doing was he started talking about prices. He said, how much are hot dogs now? How much is bacon? How much is this? How much is that? Like, everything costs more. So when I heard the whole thing, I thought, oh, wait, it makes sense. Oh, that's what you meant. If I had like a 2-minute clip, Trump sounded like he was crazy. If I only listened to 2 minutes, because I wouldn't have got the context. When I listened to the whole thing in context, it's like, oh, now I see what you were saying. I had to listen. He's also got this thing he does. Again, the first time I listened to his speech, I didn't know this, so it looked weird. He does this kind of poem about a snake. And a woman basically, rescues an injured snake, nurses it back to health, and it bites her. And she's like, why'd you bite me? I nursed you back to health. And he basically says, I'm a snake. What'd you expect? I'm a snake. I do what I do. I didn't know that Trump always closes his speeches with that snake story. So the first time I'm listening to him and he starts talking about a snake, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is weird. I just didn't know that's his norm. So yeah, if you've never listened to Trump give a speech, he can sound like he's like off his rocker. Unless you listen to the whole thing or unless you've heard him give speeches before, then you kind of understand how he presents. That's also part of the disadvantage of this format for him. Trump is good when he's got the crowd because he feeds off that crowd energy. You don't do a snake story when you don't have a crowd to do the story for. It doesn't make sense. You don't pivot around when you're not trying to get the crowd energized. Doesn't make sense. Trump's going to have to figure out how to get focused on the talking points because he's not going to have the crowd to feed off of and cheer for him. So that's going to be very hard. And you also have to remember that Trump feeds off of positive and negative energy. Because I saw him at the Libertarian National Convention. And let's face it, when he got booed at the Libertarian National Convention, he went negative. He basically criticized. He looked at the libertarians and said, look, you're all a bunch of losers. You can keep voting for losers or you can vote for me and win. I understand what he was saying. I mean, the libertarians are not going to win. That third party candidate is not going to win. But that's not something you say to a group of people who, you want to have vote for you. So it's kind of that. But he feeds off of crowd energy. Positive, negative, doesn't matter. That's what he does. And that he's not going to have that when he's at the speech. So let me see. Steve Cisco. Welcome, Steve. Oh, come on. Aren't you talking about Biden and Lean Donut? You're right, Steve. When he had a unified Reich in his campaign video, it made a lot of sense. I wish I'd seen that. I didn't see the original unified Reich content. I did want to see that, but that got pulled down, and the only things I saw were people's clips that were already edited. I always like to get the original content to know what he's saying there. So jury's out on. I mean, that's a weird. Talking about a unified Reich, that is weird. But I don't have the context, and the thing that I've done is I don't just listen when someone says Trump said this or Biden said that, because what I've seen is they get taken out of context a lot. Like Trump praised Hannibal Lecter, and I was like, wait a minute, why would you praise Hannibal Lecter? That's strange. But when I heard it in context, it's like, no, he wasn't praising Hannibal Lecter. He was being sarcastic. You have to look at the whole thing, and people don't do that. So let me see, a CC. So that's kind of what you were talking about, the time limit being a factor, right? Yes. You got 2 minutes. I mean, imagine you're trying to make a speech, and just before you make it, somebody runs in and says, hey, your grandmother's sick. Okay. You still got to go make this speech, but now what's in the back of your mind? Your grandmother's sick. You're going to try to make your speech, but you're distracted. You're trying to make the speech. You're trying to think about what you're going to do with your grandmother. It's hard to be focused when you've got something like that on your mind. And you've only got 2 minutes, so you've got to really focus. You've got to really prioritize. If you had more time, you could work your way through your talking points. 2 minutes? You don't have time to go through all your talking points. You have to pick and choose the most important ones. And that's what I think is going to be hard for Trump, because the question he was asked, in his mind, is not always the most important question. Sometimes you're asking him one thing, but in his mind, the most important question is something else. And right now, what's on his mind seems to be the gag order for the conviction. That's what seems to bother him more than anything else right now. And you want to get him distracted? Get him thinking about that gag order and how he can't talk about the case the way he wants to. That seems to be the easiest way to distract him right now. And I think that's still going to be the case on the 27th, because why would the gag order be lifted in the next 2 weeks? So let me ask you this. Is there a Trump policy that you're all excited about? So I guess, if that question is to me, I guess let me think of how we approach it. So Trump's got policies that I like. Biden's got policies that I think I like. I wouldn't say, I don't take the position that only one of these candidates has good policies. I think they both have strengths and they both have weaknesses. I think that Trump's impact on the economy can be more immediate. Trump is Trump is not as focused on global warming, the Paris Accord. So Trump will focus on energy and drilling and can create jobs that are blue collar jobs and that are fairly easy to fill really quickly. Biden doesn't create those jobs, but Biden does create other jobs. Biden moves people into, he wants people to move into STEM and tech. And his idea is more of, I don't want people to have to go to college to get STEM careers. So let's create vocation in high school so that you can come out of high school ready to go into a STEM field. Now, I see value in what Trump's doing. I see value in what Biden's doing. Let me tell you, true story. Without saying who I work for, I'm working on an initiative to just better understand what AI can do. I work for a company, and I just am working on this whole thing with AI. So you know what? If we used AI more, what could we do with it? AI can put people out of jobs really fast, really fast. I mean, all of a sudden, forget if you've ever used ChatGPT. If you've never used ChatGPT, let me tell you, go take a look at ChatGPT. It's better than Google if it has the data. It's not as updated and current as Google, but to give you an example, if you go to Google and you say, I want a recipe for lasagna, you're going to get a whole lot of links with recipes you can get. If you go to ChatGPT and say, I want a recipe for lasagna, here's the recipe. Follow these steps and you got it. If you say, you know what, let me see, Lean Donut, I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for your stream. I might catch you next time. I appreciate that, Lean Donut. Click the like and subscribe button if you like it. And click the notification bell so that you're notified the next time I come up. So if you use ChatGPT, you'll get a recipe, but you don't just get a recipe. I mean, let's say it gives you one and you say, you know what, I have to do low sodium. Give me a low sodium option. They'll say, oh, well, just change these things. Like ChatGPT spits out answers. I asked ChatGPT, I was playing around with this idea for an app. I said, can you write the code for an app? I don't know how to write code. It's like, yeah, what kind of app do you want? Like, I want an app that does this. It spits out all the code. You don't need to hire a coder. You just go to ChatGPT, like, great. I got coding done from a free application on the internet. Tech is when's the last time you've been to McDonald's? Do you still go to the cash register and ask the cashier to give you a number 3? Or when you're in the grocery store, do you go to a cashier? Or do you just go to one of those kiosks and you scan your stuff and you go? Tech is taking certain jobs away. And there is a very legitimate argument for saying, I want more people to learn how to do tech. Because, let's face it, we're going to be relying on more and more tech going forward. Do you know anybody nowadays who doesn't walk around with their smartphone in their pocket? The only people who I know who don't are some baby boomers. And that's not enough. I mean, like, my mom is one of them. My mom is still old school. She still has a landline at home. She doesn't even like using speakerphone because in her mind, when you want to talk to somebody on the phone, you pick up the phone, you hold it to your ear. She did that most of her life. She doesn't like the new stuff. And I don't blame her for it. But she is part of a very small minority of people. Most people have got a smartphone. They're on the internet all day. They're addicted to YouTube and Facebook and all that other stuff because it's interesting and it's available. Tech jobs do make a lot of sense. We can take them, or we can let somebody else take them, and then we're relying on them when we could just be relying on American production. So, yeah, I can see that Trump's got some policies that are interesting and that are appealing to some people. Biden's got some policies that are interesting and are appealing to other people. Question is, which one of them is going to win more, is going to be able to sway more voters? Steve Cisco understood about the phones. It's rare to see someone without one. Yeah. ACC, LOL. My aunt still like that though. Rotary on the wall type. It's like, wow, she's really old school. She's got a rotary. But yeah, there are only a few people at this point who don't really embrace technology. Hey, One Who Cares, welcome back. Good evening to everyone in the chat. Welcome back, One Who Cares. Thanks for the stream. I'll definitely catch it next time. Thank you, CC. Please click like, subscribe, and the notification bell on your way out so that the next time I do a stream, you'll know about it. Yeah, so we are talking about the debate that is coming up on June the 27th between Biden and Trump. And I was explaining that I think Trump is not going to do well in this first debate because I think that the format overwhelmingly favors Biden for this first debate. It's only you get 2 minutes, and then your mic gets shut off. So when you answer a question, you have to be really focused. There is no crowd, and Trump really likes to have a crowd to have them react to what he's saying. And Trump's going to be dealing with this conviction. And one of the things that I was saying is, if I'm Biden, I am going to be peppering Trump with comments about how he's a convict every chance I get. I don't think anybody expects Trump to do 1 day of jail time over this hush money case. But this isn't the only case that Trump has to think about. He's got 3 other cases. I believe it's 3 other cases. Cases seem to keep blossoming. But I believe he's got 3 other cases that he has to deal with after this. And he's not going to know his sentence for sure on June the 27th because sentencing doesn't happen until the 11th of July. So this will be a very interesting interview for him. Steve Sisko is saying, I think that if Trump keeps his cool, he'll be on spot. Now, I agree with you, Steve Sisko. If Trump keeps his cool, I think he'll be fine. But that's the big question. If Trump keeps his cool. And the thing that I've seen ever since the conviction, this is what I have seen. The one thing that bothers Trump is this gag order. He can't talk about, he really wants to talk about the case. He really does, and he can't. Jersey Mike, Trump is a jolly good felon. See, that's the kind of comment that if I'm Biden, I'm gonna want Trump to have to think about those kinds of comments all the way up to the debate. I want the conviction on his mind. I want felon on his mind because I want him thinking more about how to get revenge for being convicted than I want him thinking about how to answer a question that an interviewer is asking him. If an interviewer asks Trump about the open borders and what his plan is going to be, I want him distracted and talking about, hey, this hush money case wasn't fair, this, that. I want him going off on a tangent so that early voters say, you know what? Trump didn't really explain to me his plan. Biden explained his plan to me, but I didn't really hear Trump's plan. So if I'm trying to make a decision and the only thing I have to go on is this one debate, well, I have a sense for what I can get out of Biden. I don't have a sense for what I can get out of Trump. I think that is part of Biden's strategy right now. And unless Trump can get past the fact that he's got this gag order, I think it might actually be a pretty effective strategy because, listen to the way Trump talked about the case the day after the conviction when he was at Trump Tower. Trump's usually pretty focused. Well, okay. If you understand the way Trump presents, he's got his focus. He pivots in weird ways, but he's got his major talking points and he sticks to them. When he can't talk about the case, he gets distracted. Suddenly, he complains about the gag order and how he can't talk about the case the way he wants to. That's what really gets him. Look at he did an interview with 3 anchors from Fox, and they were asking him specific questions, and he kept getting distracted, and he was going off on tangents because he wanted to talk about the case. That was where I really noticed it because I thought, you know what? This is similar to the format that Trump is going to have when he does the debate. He's being asked a question, there is no crowd, and he's got to figure out what he wants to respond to. It's actually going to be tougher for him in the debate than it was in the Fox interview. Because in the Fox interview, they at least gave him leeway so he can answer the questions. In the debate, he's only going to have 2 minutes. It's, you got a mic, you got 2 minutes. When the 2 minutes is up, bam, we shut the mic off. The other candidate gets to talk. This format really does not favor Trump, given the other things he's focusing on. If I was Trump and I was debating Biden, what I would want the traditional format. I would want the traditional format. I would want a crowd. I would want to be able to talk in more detail than just 2 minutes. I'd want to be able to explain myself and feel like I'm explaining myself fully. I'd want the podium. I'd want the whole thing. I'd want a setting that I'm familiar with. I wouldn't have a problem with moving the date out, but too many other things have changed, and I would say, no. I don't want all of this because this doesn't play to my strengths. And it's one debate. It's the only debate we're going to have before a lot of these early mail-in ballots come in. I want my best foot forward. That'd be me. But, Trump's very confident. So he's like, Biden, this is the way you want to debate me? Fine, I'll debate you like this. Now, he doesn't care. He's approaching it from the standpoint, I don't care, I'll beat you in any format. But sometimes that overconfidence can come back to bite you in the butt. Steve Sisko, I don't understand how the gag order is supposed to be unconditional, yet it's applied to him. Unconditional. I don't know that I would say I haven't heard the gag orders. There are conditions. Like, he can't name names. He can talk. He's talked about the case, but he can't get into names. And there are some things about the gag order that make sense. Like, okay, let's face it. Trump is a former president. So if he can't talk about jurors, I get that. I would not want to be a juror on a former president's case. Because the way my mind works, look, that's a powerful person. That's a person who can destroy my reputation. The last thing I want to do is convict them of something that I don't think is necessarily that big a deal. I wouldn't want to sit on the jury for a Trump trial. And if the judge is saying, look, you can't talk about the jurors, you can't name the jurors because we don't want them worried about what's going to happen, when you start talking. Like, I get that. I mean, let's face it, you got nuts out there. If Trump named the jurors, there's some psycho who's going to start sending them threats and hate mail and all kinds of stuff. There are wackos out there. So I don't blame Merchan for saying, look, there are things you cannot talk about because we don't want to have to deal with the fallout of you naming somebody and the next thing you know, some wacko is knocking on their front door. So I get that. But, it is a distraction and it can keep Trump unfocused. And one who cares exactly, Trump should stay focused. Yeah. If Trump is focused, that's a version of Trump that will come out of this pretty well. I think that a focused Trump is going to have a great debate. But I think an unfocused Trump is going to have a horrible debate because he's going to seem distracted and he's not going to be able to explain himself well because he's going to be trying to figure out what he wants to say in 2 minutes rather than just answering the question that's asked of him. That is the difficulty that he's going to have to face that Biden doesn't have to face. Biden's going to have basically, people are probably going to come out of this and they're going to say, they gave Biden softballs. This was rigged against Trump. Partly yes, partly no. I think that what's going to happen is not going to be that they give Biden softballs. It's just going to be that Biden's able to be focused. Biden, look, we know the questions that these guys are going to get asked. We know that the economy's coming up. We know the open borders are coming up. We know the wars are coming up. We know for sure those questions are getting asked. If I'm Trump, if I'm Biden, I've already got answers prepared for those questions. I know I've got 2 minutes. I might have the answer to the question almost memorized walking into the debate because I know exactly what I want to say. If I'm Biden, I can just sit back and go into autopilot. Oh, you're asking me about the open borders? Guess what? I just closed the borders. Here's my plan. This is the problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very easy for me to do that. And right when I got about 10 seconds left, hey, so I'm doing all this great stuff for the borders, but this guy over here is a convicted felon. And if he can't even keep his name clean, how can you expect him to do, that's what I would do. If I'm Biden, it always ends with Trump's a convicted felon. That's how I would approach it if I'm Biden. Now what happens when you're Trump and you get a border question and this guy's making digs at you about being a felon? Now you're distracted. Now you're sitting back and you're thinking, okay, what do I want to say? I've only got 2 minutes. I don't want to let that convicted felon thing sit and fester. I do want to answer the open border question, but now I'm instead of answering a question, I'm thinking about what I want to say. I'm thinking about what I want to respond to. That's going to be the piece that's hard. Steve Sisko, I think Trump is a leader and Biden is a follower. Trump has great leadership. I wouldn't say that Biden's not a leader. I mean, he is, their leadership styles are different. And I don't think it's their leadership styles. I don't think Biden's leadership style is necessarily his weakness. I think it's his leadership direction that can bother some people. Trump's leadership style is pretty simple. Trump kind of has this, I don't care about the rest of the world. I care about America first. He's got that kind of attitude. So his leadership style, don't talk to me about climate change. Talk to me about jobs for Americans. Jobs for Americans is more important to me than you talking about climate change. Don't talk to me about all these other things. I don't care. What improves the economy? What improves the jobs market? What improves people's lives? Like, talk to me about that. I don't care about the repercussions of all this other stuff. That's kind of Trump's leadership style. Biden's style seems to be more of this, hey, what's in the global best interest? I want to go back to the Paris Accord. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want people to get into STEM. It's like, okay, like, I don't disagree with some of your ideas in terms of them being valid, but does it feel like your ideas are doing what's in my best interest as an American? That's the thing about Biden's leadership style that, frankly, that ticks a lot of people off, is they don't feel like he's America first. Like, let's take Ukraine as an example. Like, how many billions of dollars are we pumping into Ukraine? And you got people who are saying, look, you're pumping billions of dollars into Ukraine, into what's fundamentally a losing cause. Meanwhile, Americans are suffering. The economy is not doing well. What would those dollars do for Americans that they can't do for people in Ukraine? And what's the point of sending them over to Ukraine when they're going to lose anyway? So it's leaders build plans for everybody to follow. And Trump's built a plan for people to follow, and Biden's built a plan for people to follow. So the question is not so much, is there a plan? It's more the question, do I like where this seems to be taking me? And it's very funny because I did some interviews where I asked people, basically I did 2 posts. This was over a month ago, but I asked in one of my videos, I said, what do you hate about Joe Biden? And in the other video, I said, what do you hate about Donald Trump? I just wanted to see, like, what do people say? What's really behind this? The people who didn't like Joe Biden did not like Joe Biden's policies. So, hey, I don't like where your leadership is taking me. I don't agree with it. They talked about the borders, they talked about the wars, they talked about the economy. It was very specific stuff. The people who didn't like Trump didn't like his character. They didn't like, they blamed him for, the insurrection. They talked about sexual misconduct, talked about his failed businesses. People who don't like Trump usually don't talk about his policies. The disconnect with people who don't like Trump is they'll say he's not presidential. They're like, I don't like who he is as a president. Which is kind of funny because if you look at him, Trump has been fairly consistent throughout his whole life. The Trump you see as president is basically the same guy who was running Miss America pageants and doing all, and he was The Apprentice. It's the same guy. It's just now he's president, and people aren't used to having a guy with that kind of personality in that kind of office. But Trump's personality hasn't really changed, so people don't like him in that seat. But they don't really talk about his policy. I very rarely hear anyone talk about his policy being the problem. Steve Sisko, this is off the wall, but do you think that the average news is not so newsworthy as how it used to be honest? I wish that helping Ukraine is going to help us, but I heard that Ukraine is crooked. Kelly Keegan, I hated Trump's policies. Tell me more about that, Kelly Keegan. Now, Steve, your question about the news? Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, so let's think about this about the news. The news, I don't think we really have news. We have networks that are pushing narrative. This is a true story. I did a video on this. This is last week. I woke up one morning and I took a look at the polls. I just wanted to get a sense, like, where are the candidates with the polls? I don't really trust the polls, but I just like to understand them. I went to different sources and I got 3 different answers. One poll said Biden's got a small lead. One poll said Trump's got a small lead. One poll said they were tied. I thought, well, wait a minute. How can we have 3 different news networks with 3 different opinions on who's ahead in the polls? This doesn't make any sense. We should be able to look at facts. We should be able to say, look, your news networks, you might have an opinion about the facts, but at least you all present the facts. If you want to say that 1 + 1 = 2, and one guy's saying that's big and one guy's saying that's small, okay, fine. We've established 1 + 1 = 2, so we can talk about what that means. Now, news networks now, we can't even get to a baseline 1 + 1 = 2. You're saying it's 2, you're saying it's 1.9, and you're over here saying it's something else. Like, we've lost touch with basic facts, factual reporting. It's all been replaced by feel-good opinions. If you're a liberal network, you're going to push a story that promotes the liberal agenda and says this is the right way to think. If you're a conservative network, you're going to push a conservative agenda and say this is the right way to think. It has nothing to do with the facts. It has nothing to do with what's really going on. It's just, let me get people bought into this idea and I'm going to keep pushing it. I don't care about the facts anymore. That's basically the deal. Steve Sisko said he heard that Ukraine is crooked. Look, I'm a cynic. I think every country out there is crooked to some extent. Everybody's got their hand out. The U.S. pays way too much to be the global leader. And yeah, I think that I did like that aspect of what Trump talked about, where he said, you know what? We're going to stop just giving handouts to every other country in the world. I'm going to take these dollars and I'm going to spend them on Americans. And unless I'm getting something from you guys in return for the money I'm giving you, I'm going to stop giving it to you. That I do agree with. I do like the focus on America. He deregulated the airlines. Now they're falling out of the sky. Now they're falling out of the skies. Okay, I haven't looked at the safety numbers for airlines pre and post, but let's face it, you got airlines that are going belly up, and sometimes you have questions, sometimes you don't. There was an Alaska flight. I know this because I used to fly it last year. I flew Alaska Airlines a lot. Where pilot lost his mind. One pilot went to the bathroom, the other pilot locked him out, crashed the plane. Wait a minute, don't you have tests, psychological tests that these guys have to take to make sure that they're legit and they're stable and they should be flying planes with hundreds of people on them? There's something to be said for consistency and predictability. Sometimes you have to say, you know what? I'm not focused on how to make the most profit in this situation. I need to think about safety. But I'll admit, I have to look at the airlines. I haven't looked at them that closely. He gave tax cuts, but for average folks, they were temporary, but they were permanent for the wealthy. Tax cuts. Hang on. Oh, Kelly's got. Okay, let me go through. We got some policies here. He was disastrous for the Department of Education and the Post Office. He dismantled a lot of environmental protection. He emboldened Russia, but he's slamming NATO. For me, I feel like it's the opposite. People love Trump because of who they think he is, not because of his actual policies. Most Biden voters didn't want to vote for him, but he beat expectations. It came to policies. Now, here's what I'll say, Kelly, because I can see that for you, it's policy. But there is one challenge that I want you to think about. When I ask people what they don't like about Biden, people will cite policy. They'll talk about what they don't like about Biden. When I talk about why they're voting for Biden, there are a lot of people who are voting for Biden has nothing to do with his policy, and it has everything to do with the fact that they don't like Trump. What percent of Biden's supporters are voting for him because they just don't like Trump? I can't quantify that. But what I can literally point to people in the chat. There's one guy, Dano Junkyard Dog. He's always got crazy ideas that he posts in chat. That guy was a Republican. And I'll come in. That guy was a Republican, but he doesn't like Trump. He doesn't like the way Trump has managed the GOP, and he's not really a Biden supporter. He just doesn't like Trump, so he's voting for Biden. Is he right? Is he wrong? Don't really get into that. It's his choice. But he represents a lot of people who are saying they don't like Trump, the person, so they're not voting for him. Kelly Keegan, give an example of a Biden policy that people often complain about. Sure. The biggest complaint people have about Biden is the open borders. That is his single biggest Achilles heel. There is a perception that Biden is allowing way too many people into the country to the detriment of Americans. Now, you can debate whether that's true or not, but the perception people have is that Biden's open border policy is detrimental to Americans. That far and away was the number one thing people cited as why they don't like Biden and his policies. And when you look at news where they're talking about people who are immigrants coming in and getting room and board, for some Americans who feel like the immigrants have a better quality of life than they do, that infuriates them. Now, there's a lot more to immigration than that. I'm not really a big fan of Biden's PR because I don't think his PR team is very good. I think that I think that he could take immigration off the table if he just kind of explained it better. But he does. But his PR team never does. So it's a weakness of his because he hasn't really fixed it. Part of what you have to think about with immigration is most of the issues that presidents deal with are complicated. Immigration is no different. But here are things that nobody ever talks about, but it's true. One of them is that when you talk about immigration in the United States, most of the immigration into the United States is legal immigration. Nobody ever talks about that. Most of the people who are coming in legally. There are a lot of people who are coming in illegally, but most of them are legal. Never gets talked about. Most of the people who come in aren't criminals and drug dealers and all that stuff. But Biden doesn't speak to that, and Trump presents a narrative that says, look at all of the danger that Biden's allowing into the country. Biden does not do a good job of managing that message. And what Biden allows people to do is say, hey, I'm seeing immigrants. I don't see how this benefits me as an American. I don't like it. And Biden hasn't really explained why it's a good thing for America. So yeah, there are policies Biden has that people don't like. There are reasons why people don't like them that make sense. And there are ways that Biden could to try to resolve the issues. But he hasn't resolved the issues, and that's one thing he's got to own. The economy is an issue for Biden as well, but that one's a little bit trickier because for a lot of people, you got to remember we're still coming off of COVID with Trump. So even if the economy's kind of crummy, a lot of people can say, well, I have a job now. When COVID hit, I lost my job, and it took me a long time to get back on my feet. So having a job that, where you're struggling versus not having a job and not knowing how to pay your bills, it's much preferred to at least have the job and have some sense of control. That's a tougher one. That economy is a tougher one for Trump to win. It is a weakness of Biden's. People talking about the economy and kind of the inflation and feeling a pinch. Steve Sisko. Yeah, you can't even get a week's full of groceries for $100. Inflation is a problem for Biden, but it's tricky because the person who, you got one person will say, hey, the $100 I made doesn't go as far as it would have 4 years ago. But then you got another person who's saying, hey, 4 years ago I didn't have a job, so I have a job now, I can do something. So economy in the jobs, it's very tricky because it depends on who you are and what your situation is. And I can find half of people who say they wish Trump was in office because of the economy, and I can find another half of people who say they're thankful Biden's in office because of the economy. It's really just a matter of where you are today versus where you were 4 years ago. I don't blame Trump for COVID, but the fact remains COVID hit when Trump was president. And if you're the president, you get the praise, you get the blame. That's what goes with having that seat. So that's a great question. What are his policies and what do people complain about? If we go to Trump, and that's kind of the other thing, the thing that people complain about with Trump was not primarily his policies. The things they most complained about with Trump were insurrection, sexual misconduct, failed businesses. Nothing to do with policy. They were voting against Trump because they didn't like Trump the person. Didn't really seem to have much to do with Trump the president. Now that's not to say that there aren't people like you who can mention policies and problems they have, but it is to say that when you ask most people, most voters, what's going on, it's not policy with Trump. It's character. Kelly Keegan. The economy is doing well by the numbers. Inflation doesn't explain high grocery prices. Food retailers jacked up the price during COVID and blamed the supply chain. Now they are making record profits. Okay, so here's the economy is a very tricky thing, but I'll say this because it's funny. 1 year ago, border narrative. Let me scroll back up. Let me see what you said about the border narrative. I'm doing this on my phone, so I only have a small window of comments. So let me see. People love Trump because of who they think he is. Okay, nope. I want to find your border. Let me see, Kelly. Let me see if I can find it. I don't see your border comment. So apologies for that. If you can just repost it or just post the highlights, then I can take a look and respond to it. It's a little trickier on my phone to go back through. Let me see. So, okay, you were saying the economy is doing well. Oh, yeah, so the inflation piece. Here's the deal about inflation. Okay, we are experiencing inflation now, and some people will complain about inflation. Fundamentally, if you look at what you're making and what it can get, yeah, prices have gone up faster than income has gone up. That's true. But here's what people don't know, and it just goes back to Biden doesn't sell things well. I had to do this projection a year ago. I won't get into details, but basically, a big company wanted to figure out where's the economy going to be so that I understand how much money people have to buy the products that I sell. Fortune 500 companies do stuff like that to say, I want to know how much spending power people are going to have because that helps me figure out how much product to produce. Okay. So I did all this. It's not that hard to find. You can find estimates from like Bank of America, World Bank, all these different financial institutions. There's a federal listing, and they'll talk about kind of their outlooks on the economy. So you just look at everybody's summaries, and then you start trying to figure out, where is everybody saying the same thing? Where are they different? Why are they different? You kind of go through that. What everybody was saying a year ago was that like around Christmas of last year or kind of the beginning of this year, we were going to be in an all-out recession. That was the estimate. So we're not in a recession. And some of that is because of policies Biden's been able to put in place that have increased inflation. Prices go up, but have not left us in a recession. People are losing their jobs, don't know how to get themselves out of the hole. So Biden's economy it's kind of this weird situation where you have to say, all right, you got a bucket full of water, you bang into, let me see, Steve Cisco, I need to go. Thanks for the chat. Very nice, interesting. Yeah, thanks for stopping by, Steve. Hit the like and subscribe button on your way out and the notification bell. Next time I do a live, you'll know it's there, and feel free to join. Love to have the discussion. So you kind of have to think about the leaky bucket. You got a bucket and you bump it against a corner, and now it's got a hole in it. And if you look at it, you got like 10 minutes before it's going to be empty. Now let's say you kind of plug the hole. So you plug the hole, and in 10 minutes, it's still got half the water in it. Now somebody can complain and say, look, there's only half the water. But somebody else can say, well, wait a minute, this thing was supposed to be empty. You plugged it and you still saved half the water. That's kind of the inflation situation we're in right now. The economy was supposed to be, in a worse place than it was. So some people will look and just say, the economy's not great. Okay. But if you look at where things were supposed to be, relative to that, the economy is actually in a pretty good spot. So I don't knock where we are with the economy right now, but I get it. Kelly Keegan, did my border message go through this time? It did not. There are weird things in the YouTube filters, so I don't know what you said. Maybe the border message didn't go through the first time because when I was scrolling, I didn't see it. Some YouTube filters make sense. Sometimes weird things will come up. So, like sometimes you'll say something and it's harmless, but YouTube might think, well, this could be an ethnic slur. Like, I didn't use it as an ethnic slur, but it's like AI is doing the filtering, so some things come through. I've had people talk before about sending me messages and the message never goes through, and I never see them. I don't see. Sometimes some things that YouTube filters, like on a video, I can see because they'll show me, we didn't let these through. Are they okay or not? But on a live stream, I don't have that benefit. It's just it comes through or it doesn't. So yeah, I would love to see what the comment is. I gotta take another quick hit of my coffee. My kid got me this for Father's Day, so I was quite happy about it. She knows I'm a big coffee drinker, which I am, and she got me a gift that she knew I would actually use, as opposed to just some fluffy something or other that would sit on a shelf. So yeah, if we are talking about the upcoming debate, and we're talking about the economy, if I'm Trump, I'm going to talk about the inflation levels, and I'm going to point to Biden and say, you really haven't left us in a better place at the end of your term than you did at the start. But if I'm Biden, I'm going to point at Trump and I'm going to talk about how people were out of work. Basically, I'm going to say, look, the economy fell into the toilet because of COVID. Why didn't you get us out of it faster? I can see those being the points. And also, if I'm Biden, I'm going to say, and by the way, you're a convict. That if I'm Biden, I'm going to always do, here's my point, and by the way, you're a convict. Because I don't want Trump to be focused on his answer. I want him to be focused on things that he can't say. If I'm Biden, that's the way I'm approaching it. Economy is going to be, here's what economy boils down to. This is literally what economy boils down to. If I'm an auto worker in Michigan, I'm making $50,000 a year. I got a wife, I got 2 kids. I'm trying to provide for my family. Which of these 2 presidents do I think is going to do the better job of helping me to provide for my family? Do I think it's Biden or do I think it's Trump? When that gets into, it's not just my salary. I mean, let's face it. I got the wife, I got the 2 kids, I got health insurance, I got all kinds of things that I'm trying to do. Who do I think is going to set me up better over the next 4 years? Biden or Trump? Figuring out that message, that's really the message that these guys have to try to do. If I'm Biden, I'm going to make darn sure that I try to keep Trump from being able to laser focus on something that's specific. If he talks about the economy in general, great, not going to help. You need to convince an auto worker in Michigan what to do, because the election is probably going to boil down to Michigan. If you win Michigan, probably literally just if you map this out, if Trump wins Georgia and Biden wins Pennsylvania, then whoever wins Michigan is basically going to be at 270. If Biden wins Pennsylvania and Michigan, it's not over, but it's almost over. Like, mathematically, it's possible for Trump to still win, but it's not likely. If Trump wins Georgia and he wins Michigan, game over. He won the election. Biden's done. So, if I'm Biden, my focus is going to be trying to keep Trump off balance. I need him to be unfocused so that when he's got 2 minutes to answer a question, he's flustered and he's trying to figure out how to answer something that I said about him as a convict, while also answering the question that the moderator asked about whatever the issue is. That's where I want Trump's mind if I'm Biden. Trump is going to be trickier because Trump generally has been sticking to his major talking points, but his major talking points might not work as well on June the 27th. Why? Well, if he talks about the border. Hey, your open border policy, Biden. Well, right now, Biden just closed the borders. So Biden's got a way of responding to that. If Trump talks about the war, depending upon how this Gaza, ceasefire, peace deal goes, Biden might say, what are you talking about? I just addressed that. Trump has some very specific talking points that he usually uses, and he might not be able to use them as well on the 27th, which is really interesting because Biden closed the borders, but that's most likely temporary. He didn't close them because he wants to close them. He closed them because too many people were coming over all at once. Keeps them closed through the 27th. He can talk about closed borders in that debate. Trump can't use that as an attack because, what are you talking about? Close the borders. Trump's kind of stuck there. If he talks about the war, even if this peace deal falls apart, and it's not a guarantee, if they're still talking about it on June the 27th, and Trump wants to talk about the wars, Biden can say, I've pretty much got that wrapped up. A few more days and we're going to have a peace deal. So it's much harder. Trump can attack him on Gaza, but every time Trump fires off on Gaza, pardon the pun, Biden can respond back with, Trump can attack Ukraine, but every time he talks about Ukraine, if I'm Biden, I'm going to bring it back to Gaza. Like, you know what? We got 2 different wars that we're dealing with. I just knocked out one. Now I'll get to this other one. It's harder for Trump to cast Biden in a negative light on those topics just right now because Biden's got a plan in place for them. Economy, sure, he can attack Biden on the economy, and he can get some traction there. But it's still going to be hard. And the thing that he can't do, the thing that he doesn't have, is a response for when Biden calls him a convict. I mean, he can bicker but he doesn't really have anything substantial that he can say about Biden that kind of levels the playing field. That's his big disadvantage. That's going to be probably the hardest thing for him to do, is figure out how he wants to navigate the whole conviction. And not just the conviction, but really the gag order, because he really wants to talk about things in more detail than he's allowed to. Right now he can't. So that's just going to be that tough thing. But the moral of the story here was, we got a debate that's coming up on the 27th. For me, that's going to be the hottest thing on TV in a while. I cannot get enough of the Biden versus Trump presidential race for 2024. I just think it's one of the most compelling stories we have. And I am going to be very excited to see these guys in their format, in the studio, even though it's not on stage. I'm still going to be excited to see them in studio responding to these questions, and I'm going to be especially interested in seeing how America responds to it the following day. I'm encouraging everyone to listen to that debate when it happens. I don't think there's going to be anything anywhere close to as interesting as that particular day on TV. We'll see. Anyway, my name's Gene. I'm the last good man in Jersey. I try to do a show at least every Tuesday. Sometimes I do them more. So if you like the content, click like, click subscribe, click the notification bell, so that the next time I'm on, you'll know. You can join the conversation. And with that, we're going to call it a night. But thanks everybody for tuning in.